Hi, I'm Bryan with Pioneer Builders. Welcome to another episode of The Build Show. This video is sponsored by Warehoos. So if you're watching this video, you've probably watched a bunch of videos from Matt Reisinger, Steve Basic, Jake Bruton. What I find is a lot of people are doing a ton of deep dives into building science. They see all of these high performance products, but they don't necessarily know where to get them. That's the case even if you're a builder or an architect specifying, but what if you're a homeowner and you want to use a product and maybe your builder is unaware of it? Or maybe you're self-performing. You're building a beautiful custom home. You know you want to use some of these products, but you don't have a clue where to get them. Well, the purpose of this video is to introduce you to warehoos.com, warehoos.com. We'll go ahead and make sure that you can find that website easily. This website has a ton of high-performance building products, so you can do one-stop shopping. And what we're gonna do is, I'm here at the Rational Spec House build, and I'm gonna use our rigid insulation that we're using for an unvented crawl space as a case study. We're down here in the crawl space. You can see that the guys have already been installing the ISI building products, Vapor CS as far as the vapor barrier is concerned. On the outside, we've taken care of bulk water using PolyGuard suite of products. But what we do in an unvented crawl space is put the insulation inboard of this vapor barrier. So normally most conventional crawl spaces have insulation in the floor system within the joist cavities. But in this case, what you do, it's almost like a short basement. So when you're gonna be doing your materials takeoffs, this house, when you look around at the foundation, it's all over the place as far as its elevations. Building here in the Pacific Northwest, a lot of our sites have slopes to them. There was 8 or 9 feet of elevation difference from the back to the front, from corner to corner. So that's why we have so many steps. I'm gonna show you later how you can do a takeoff using software like Bluebeam, but in this case, we actually needed to wait and see how the foundation actually shook out. So you're going to be dealing with square footages here. So it's pretty simple. You just measure, that's about 6 feet. And then here, you're about 4 feet. So 24 square feet just for this location. However, when it comes to figuring out what the materials are that you need, you also have to know what your R values are that you're going to be putting on the wall. In this case, we're doing R15 on the wall because in this location, if you're inboard, it's R15. If you're outboard of the foundation, it's R10. Some different materials when it comes to insulation don't net out that easily just to say it's R15 or R10, especially like in this house, we're going to be using Rigiboard 80, and there can be different R values per inch. Ultimately, you want to have a minimum amount of R value in order to achieve it. Now, what I actually got to do with Warehoos, which was nice, was interface with them because they know the products that they actually have, as well as what they have in stock. Sometimes when it comes to insulation, while it would be nice to always have just one product that's going to meet the thickness that you need, sometimes you actually have to double it up. So I didn't have to do all of the thinking. I was able to work with them as far as giving them the footages, what the specification was for performance, and then they were able to help come up with the quantities. So you have packaging that comes into play. There's a whole lot of factors when it comes to, and you're seeing my accountant coming out in me right now, there's a whole lot of factors as well as procurement and logistics. And being able to work with a company and having people behind the scenes to help you to get your product on site is super helpful. Okay, so we'll back up a little bit. In this particular jurisdiction, I worked with the code official because I don't know if they've ever seen an unvented crawl space. So that's another thing that you have to factor in. What they're making us do here, which I didn't have to do in a different jurisdiction, is actually have horizontal insulation coming out on the flat. So in this case, in talking it over with him, we're doing an R10. I don't know that the building science requires it. And in talking with the gentleman at Mason County, he acknowledged, basically, he's like, Bryan, you have a reputation for knowing this stuff. Our frost depth is only 12 inches. So if you think about that here, that's about 12 inches. If you have 6 inches down to soil, that's where we're at as far as frost depth. The lower you get, the more stable the temperature is. So you're not going to be getting a huge delta from the inside to the outside, and our insulation is going to come all the way down here. While I don't think the science requires us to do what they're saying, he's got a legitimate concern that he is beholden to the building code and his interpretation of it. So anyway, just a nice kind of a side trip there. Work with your inspector, be willing to be flexible and reasonable, while also gently pushing back when necessary. It's a balance. If anything, it's an art, because you are dealing with real people. And anyway, in this case, this is what we're going to have to do. Now, one other thing that we're going to do is we, in a sense, invented a new floor system. Normally, we wouldn't have to have insulation behind our floor joists. Normally, we have our diaphragm sitting on top, our floor diaphragm. In this case, remember earlier I talked to you about that massive difference in elevation from one side to the other? We're going to have our floor joist sitting inside here. So what we're going to do, this is going to get cut down. Timmy built this footing to be thicker. We're going to use this to support the floor system. So it'll be a post and beam system on this side. Over the top, they'll have their mud sill, and then they'll tie it all together over the top with Huber Advantech X-Factor subfloor. So that's going to tie it up there. The vertical gravity loads will be picked up, traced down to the foundation. The insulation is going to basically be cut around this. I still just feel way more comfortable, whether I should or shouldn't, in bearing directly to concrete. If this was more of a uniform load, maybe I'd be more comfortable with it floating on top, but in this case, it's truly a point load. I want that to bear directly to the concrete. So we'll have no thermal bridging behind our joists. We'll have that minimum R10 performance spec, it'll actually be more than that, behind the ends of the floor joists. And then there will be, 4x4, which is 3.5 by 3.5, a few square inches peppered around that doesn't have that actual insulation. Does it matter? Absolutely not. Not for what we're trying to achieve. Remember, I already showed you where that frost depth is, so we're going to be good to go. So when it comes to your specifications, if you're an architect, you might be doing a performance spec. Again, just pay attention when you are in the field needing to execute things, that you understand what's in the performance specification, and then you can mix and match what you need to achieve that. In the real world, you have what's available. Maybe a plant went down. Maybe a plant went on strike. You never know. So you want to be able to have substitutions depending on what you're going to be installing. So an architect might just have on your plans mineral wool. They might have chosen that because of its hydrophobic characteristics, or because of its higher R value per inch, or because of how well it performs in a fire. So if it just says mineral wool, you kind of run the gamut of what you can do. But maybe they bring it down to a specific company and manufacturer. You might have to do a submittal and make sure that the architect is okay with what you've done. And maybe the architect is working with a building science or a building envelope consultant, and it has to go through that process. In this case, we were able to get this shipped out pretty quickly, but you do want to think as downstream as far as you reasonably can so that the process can keep moving forward. Let me go ahead and run you up there and I'll show you what this particular product actually looks like. So you can see how much insulation we have here. It was delivered on these pallets. It's all wrapped. I'm going to go ahead and pull this down and give you an idea. So yeah, when it comes to materials specifications or for the actual amount that you require, you have to think in terms of what gets delivered and how it gets packaged. So here is the Powerwool Rigid Mineral Wool Insulation, Rigiboard 80. You can see what it says on here, energy saving, recycled content, very rigid. So this product isn't going to be like your typical bad insulation that goes in your stud cavities. Thermal resistance, let's see, R4.2 per inch. So this here is 2 inches, so 4.2 per inch. If you just do 2 times that, that's going to be 8.4. That's going to leave me just a little bit shy of that R10 that I require. So you might have to double this up. You just have to figure that out with what you're actually able to get on site. And I'll just go ahead and show you what it looks like. So in this package, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And that is what the insulation looks like. You can see it is very much a board type product. If I had to, I could probably snap it. I'm not going to cut it or anything like that. We'll leave it in full pieces for the guys to make use over there. Okay, so when it comes to actually installing it, I'm not going to install it. Let me run down into the garage just to give you a little bit of a mock-up. So we were inside the crawl space already. Just imagine that we've got our vapor barrier in here. This is going to go just vertically up against it. So you've got your rigid board up against the foundation. You take your Aerosmith, basically it's a cap fastener gun, pierce it through, pull the trigger, and it pins. There's other ways you can do this. You could do powder actuated. I think that the Aerosmith gun is so amazing, super easy to use. It holds it in nicely. Pretty limited thermal bridging as far as the material is concerned. The other advantage is powder actuated is a whole nother ball of wax when it comes to safety and things that you have to keep in consideration there. So anyway, that's how this gets installed, and you just cut it and fit it, and it's pretty good. I'm going to go ahead and show you on a computer what it looks like and maybe just 1 or 2 other things on the warehoos.com website. All right, here I am, Command Central. I am at my home office, which is what I do a lot of my work out of. What I'm going to do is go ahead and use my Bluebeam software to show you what a takeoff could look like if you were just basing it off of your computer. So again, Bluebeam, you can see my scale is 1/4 inch equals 1 foot. You could use mathematics on plan left there or plan west. 6 feet is going to be this dimension here. You could add up 26 feet, 6 feet, 20 feet, and just start going around and having to do things more by hand. And just to kind of show you what that would look like, 6 plus 6 plus 20, etc. But remember, you have to think in at least 2 dimensions here. We're not going to worry about the thickness right now. So if you've got a 2-foot crawl space, that's 64 square feet. But if there was 2 more feet, let's see, did I do that wrong? Let's try that one more time. Yes, I did do my math right. All right, so that's one way to do it. You'd have to run all of your calculations. Here's another way. If you do a poly length, I'm going to do that from over here. If you go here into your lengths, I'm going to do a poly length measurement and do preset at 1/4 inch per foot. Now I can zoom in. And as far as what makes this a little easier is just going to outside corners. If you have a little bit of extra materials, it doesn't hurt anything. And I'll just go ahead and do this whole thing so you see what it looks like, but I'm not going to be too terribly precise on it because I already have the materials. But for those who aren't used to materials quantities takeoffs, here's what it could look like. Trying to get over, there we go. Another little trick is if you press your shift button, it'll automatically take you, oh, I'm doing this at the same time as I'm working. If you do shift, it'll automatically give you 90-degree corners which is nice. And let me zoom out so I got a better view. So I believe I'm gonna just hit enter. Here we go. 201 feet, 10 inches. So call it 202 feet. So if you were at 202 lineal feet times a 2-foot crawl space, you have 404 square feet that you would need. And then if you figured out what your materials specification was as far as thickness is concerned, then you can start backing that in. So it's not so much a volume number. And then like we talked about on site, how many come in each piece, how do they get shipped? Even the delivery itself is something that you have to figure out. Right there, it's your very first link. So the way they have it formatted, they've got some best-selling items here. Sure enough, they've got Powerwool rigid board, 80 rigid, so that seems familiar, but what else do they have? Some weather barrier sealant, a roof repair. You can shop by category, so you've got even some siding products, insulation and vapor barriers, decking. Let's see, what might we want to take a look at? Well, let's look at tape sealants, adhesives, and primers. So tape sealants, let's see what kind of sealants these guys have. So we already saw some of this. But here they've got Tremco thermoplastic elastomeric glass and siding sealant. That's something that you're not going to find in your big box stores. This one's interesting, Sikaflex 1A elastomeric sealant. So when you're starting to work with some high performance products, like maybe it's Inotech windows and doors and they've got UPVC, you have to make sure that you're using sealants that are compatible with different products. So it's nice to see that they have some things that maybe we don't see too terribly often. In this case, I added this to cart. I picked the Tremco Tremsil 200 white single component, etc. We'll just kind of show you what that looks like. So then it's pretty simple. If you've ever ordered anything online, it's that easy. You know, I've been doing this for so many years and I am still learning. Even to have a website like this, check out warehoos.com. It'll make your life easier. Thank you so much for watching. I learn things from people all the time and I hope that you've learned from me. I've sure enjoyed doing this. Have fun on your build and go build something.